Now I would like to introduce today's guest speaker. Alex Countee joined FOX4 Kansas City in December 2019 and has taken over the weekend morning meteorologist position along with the noon show Monday through Wednesday, and some 9 a.m. shows. Born and raised in Kansas City, Alex graduated from Archbishop O'Hara in 2013 and went on to graduate from the University of Missouri, Columbia with a degree in atmospheric science in May 2017. There, he interned at KOMU 8 News as a weathercaster. The first major step of his broadcasting career took him to South Bend, Indiana after college, where he experienced every season and got to see phenomena unique to the Great Lakes region, such as lake effect snow. Now he's back home in Kansas City, and we're pleased and honored to have him take the time today to join us. So please join me in welcoming Alex Countee.
Eric, thank you so much. I love doing this for the Linda Hall Library. This is fantastic. I'm really happy to be here. And like Eric said, my name is Alex Countee. I'm with FOX4, and I'm the newest meteorologist here at the station. Just started back in December, back home after being in Indiana for about 2.5 years, as Eric mentioned. And we're really excited to kind of learn a little bit more about what it is and what it takes to become a meteorologist. So let's just kind of get right on in here. I'm going to share my screen. All right. Hopefully everybody can see that. So, what does it take to be a meteorologist? Well, it all started for me way back in the day when I was a little kid, back in the early 2000s. I was, just about 5 or 6 years old, and I was just really interested in just kind of how earth science worked. I knew I wanted to do something earth science based. I love being outside. I'm an Eagle Scout, went camping, hiking, fishing, all that kind of stuff. So I just really like being outdoors, and really just wanted to see how the earth worked and everything like that. All right, so we're back in gear. How did I get interested in weather? Like I said, started as a young child. It was back in 2002. I don't know if anybody here in the Metro remembers January 2002. The students, probably not, but maybe your teachers and your parents, they definitely remember the ice storm in late January of '02. We got 3 inches of freezing rain that all made a thick layer of ice. Where I was living back on the south side in Kansas City, we had big old oak trees all around our ranch style house. And so you can imagine the damage that came from all of that ice bringing down tree limbs, power lines. Basically, we didn't have power for 7 to 10 days. And it was exactly the worst case scenario. We had no heat, no water, no lights, none of that. So we are all living in our living room essentially, and just kind of, huddled together for warmth, did whatever we could to stay warm. Luckily, we had a fireplace, so we had a fire going nonstop. But that was kind of the spark for me. That was like, wow, how is it that something so simple as ice can do all of this? Millions of dollars worth of damage in a short amount of time. It only took like a day for this storm to really grow, move through, and then dissipate away. So that was really interesting to me to see how weather can create such massive damage. So after January of 2002, I kind of just started researching as best as I could. Mainly, I started sitting down and just watching TV, just watching the local meteorologists on Channel 9, KMBC. I watched Brian Busby for years and years as a kid. Obviously, FOX4 as well. Even the Weather Channel. My dad was kind of a weather fan as well. He would always watch either the local news or the Weather Channel before he took myself and my younger sister to school every day. And I just sat down and started watching with him just to see how the atmosphere works, not only on a local scale here in Kansas City, but how it affects the entire country, the entire world. Weather is everywhere, and the atmosphere covers the entire planet. So it's all connected in one way or another. And that kind of brings me to, I guess my main point is that weather affects all of us, every single person on the planet Earth, every day, every hour, every minute, every second. And you might not realize it all the time, but it does. It does. And especially during severe weather season in the spring and even a little bit in the fall, even sometimes in the summer. We have a severe weather threat tonight. Hopefully you're watching the news this morning. I was talking a lot about it. Carly Ritter was talking about it as well, my fellow meteorologist on the morning show. So we're going to have some storms coming through tonight that could cause some damage for some people. So it's really, really important to just always be aware of the world around you, no matter what, and that does involve the weather as well. All right, so where did it all start? I went to Archbishop O'Hara High School, as Eric mentioned. That is now St. Michael the Archangel in Lee Summit, Missouri, for those of you who might have heard of that or heard of O'Hara. But after I graduated O'Hara in 2013, I went to college at the University of Missouri in Columbia, good old Mizzou Tigers. I graduated with a degree in atmospheric science. I got a minor in math, took a lot of math. I'll get to some of those classes that you might have to take if you are interested in becoming a meteorologist a little bit later on. Graduated in 2017, so about 3 years ago. What I really liked about Mizzou, besides the fact that it was in my home state, the in-state tuition was a very big plus, I will admit, but also because the class sizes were a good size. They were small to medium. You know, there were probably about 100 kids in the meteorology program when I was there at Mizzou. And there was great one-on-one time with all of my professors. The teachers were really, really great. They wanted you to learn the information. They didn't just throw it in your face and say, you know, here, deal with it. They really wanted you to know what was going on. And that's really important because as a broadcaster, I got to know what's going on. So there are also opportunities to storm chase. We do live in the Central Plains and weather is very active here in the spring. So I was able to do that. I was able to do some hands-on forecasting as well, especially during internships. I'll talk about that even a little later on. All right, so core classes when you get to college. I will say in high school, if you are interested in doing not just meteorology, just anything science-based, probably already know, you gotta take those science classes. So if you like math and science, that's great. Good for you. Keep up that passion. Like me, I was not super great in math. I struggled in math in grade school and a little bit of high school as well. You know, B's and sometimes some C's. Some tests were very, very difficult and I did not do so well. But, you know, I buckled down. I studied some more if I had to. I went into, you know, talked to my teachers after school or during office hours in high school, whatever I had to do to get the job done. And eventually you kind of pick up on things and you get into a rhythm and you start to improve. So if you are trying to get or are interested in science-based subjects, but you struggle with math and science, I know that is very, very difficult subjects, both of those, keep going, keep pushing. You know, find friends who are good at that stuff. You know, have them help you. Your teachers are there for a reason, have them help you as well. That's what they're there for. All right, so when you get to college, these are some of the classes that you have to take. Calculus, which is upper level math. There's 3 classes there over, this is not obviously all at once, but over 4 years of time. We also have physics as well, physics 1 and 2. So again, lots of math, lots of science, a little bit of chemistry in there. I did have to take 1 chemistry class. And then you have your core meteorology classes, synoptic meteorology, which is just like broad scale meteorology, like what you would think of when you hear the word weather. That's a breakdown of synoptic meteorology. Thermodynamics is just a fancy word for how heat transfers throughout the atmosphere. Weather briefing was actually how weather plays into aviation. If you wanted to be an air traffic controller at KCI, if you wanted to be a pilot, if you wanted to do anything that involves planes, even shipping, commercial or otherwise, and even some private meteorology jobs, which I'll go into a little bit later, have a lot to do with weather briefing. So that was a pretty cool class to kind of see how weather is involved in another sector of our society. So that was really cool. Radar meteorology, we use radar every single day. That's the most important tool that we have as a meteorologist. So that is obviously a very, very important class. Atmospheric physics and dynamics have to do with kind of just how air travels around the world. So a little synopsis there. All right, so as Eric mentioned, after college, I had a couple internships. I was at KOMU Channel 8 in Columbia for a few years. And then in the summer of 16, I came back home for the summer and worked with Brian Busby over at Channel 9. I was off camera, but I was just kind of learning how the nuts and bolts, what they are really, what the nuts and bolts are, how does the job of a broadcast meteorologist entail, what does it entail in a major market, because Kansas City is a pretty good sized city. It's the biggest city in the state of Missouri. And you might imagine that there are a ton of people that watch local news here in this city. So there's a couple of things that were obviously very different from working in a small town like Columbia versus Kansas City, Missouri. So it was really cool to kind of compare and contrast the two and see what was the same and what was different. All right, so my first crack at meteorology was way back in June of 2015. And my hair was bigger then, for sure. I do miss it sometimes, but in the heat and humidity, not so much. All right, so like I said, I was an intern. I was a weathercaster, which is just a fancy word for saying a meteorologist who doesn't have his degree yet. So I was weathercaster Alex Countee instead of meteorologist Alex Countee. But yeah, for those 2-ish years, I was mainly off camera, just kind of working at the wall. You see some pictures there of me at one of our spots there next to the monitors, and then me in front of the green screen, just kind of honing my craft, improving, learning on some things, just figuring out, first of all, how to talk to a camera, yet also connect with somebody who could be just watching on their couch at home. All right, so after doing that for a couple of years, graduated and then shipped out to South Bend, Indiana in June of 2017. So there was a quick turnaround between graduation on May 12th and then moving to South Bend on June 1st. So that was a very, very fast 2 weeks. But I stayed there until November of last year. I was the weekend morning meteorologist, and something that you guys might not realize about the job of a broadcast meteorologist. Weather is 24/7, so that means you as a meteorologist on TV are also 24/7, 365 sometimes. There's not really a true vacation. We're always on call. We are always on call. If severe weather strikes or winter weather strikes or anything crazy happens, we got to be able to go in, we got to be able to talk about it, and we got to be able to stay with whatever bad weather is coming on through for the long haul until it is totally gone or dissipates away. All right, so my schedule, just a little brief synopsis here, was Saturday morning through Wednesday morning. All right, so my weekends were Thursday, Friday. So it's a weird schedule when you work in TV, no matter what. I went into the station at 3 a.m. I woke up at like 1 a.m. So the hours are nuts, especially when you're starting out. That's something I just have to warn you about the job. 3 a.m. to noon, you do adjust to the schedule, trust me, especially if it's consistent enough. So I was in the studio for the weekends, and then I did some weather reporting, kind of like what you see in the left picture. I was at South Bend International Airport talking about some regional weather for the Thanksgiving holiday if people were going to be flying out. So behind the scenes is pretty cool. You know, I got to go to Carbondale, Illinois, the southern tip of Illinois, back in 2017, like 2 or 2.5 months into my first job for the total solar eclipse that came through the United States. That was very cool. It was also very hot and it was very humid. That was my fellow colleague, Drew Gardner, one of the anchors there. And that was a very hot time. That was also the picture right above here. I was just about to do a live report. This couple of pics from the studio, just behind the scenes stuff, and it was a lot of fun. I learned a lot in South Bend. I almost froze, or at least I felt like I almost froze. I burned up in the heat in the summertime, did everything in between, and got to see some really cool stuff. Learned a lot about just how to be a broadcaster in general as well. So I brought all that knowledge back to Kansas City. I was very, very fortunate to get back home to KC. This is the dream right here when I was a little kid and finally decided that I wanted to be a meteorologist on TV. I wanted to do it in my hometown where I'm from and where I grew up. And so in December, that all came true for me, and it's been very, very good ever since then. So I've been at FOX4 only for a short time, about 6 months or so. Again, I'm a weekend morning meteorologist, and again, the schedule is not so good. It's roughly 2 to 10 a.m. Right now, I'm actually working Monday through Friday because Michelle Bogowith is on maternity leave, so I'm taking over her shift during the weekday mornings. Otherwise, I'll be on the weekend mornings. All right, so just a little bit more about the field of meteorology, especially from a broadcasting point of view. It's a pretty small nook, a pretty small niche, if you will. Everybody knows everybody else. It's very easy to connect with other broadcast Mets, and through these conferences, the American Meteorological Society and the National Weather Association, a lot of meteorologists are in both of those, or at least one. And so there's always conferences, not so much now with the current situation, but back when everything was normal last year, there were conferences at least once a year. Everybody got together, they talked about weather, and they had a great time. Like I said, great networking opportunities within this field. Facebook and Twitter, obviously very important with pretty much everything nowadays, and that does go for broadcast meteorology. All right, so depending on where you want to end up, if you have a thought in mind, if you do want to be a broadcast Met, you're going to have to go somewhere small, like what I did. For broadcast meteorology and just broadcasters in general, there's a market size, and it ranks cities or areas across the country on a scale from 1 to 210, basically just based on how many people watch in that area. So as you might imagine, New York City is number one. There's so many people in New York. There's like 6.6 million people there, or something crazy like that. They are number one. Los Angeles is number two. It goes all the way down to Glendive, Montana, I believe. That's the last spot. You might imagine there's very little people there. There's not a whole lot of people watching TV. So South Bend and Elkhart, which were the two cities right next to each other in northern Indiana, that was number 99 and 210. Kansas City is number 32. So a big jump up between those two areas, and that was good enough for me, for sure. Obviously, as you might imagine, starting out in your first job, in any job, you're not going to be making too much, but it is definitely enough to get by, for sure. There were some times where it was a little bit tricky because you have to deal with, life, rent, food, entertainment, doing stuff on your weekends, and also had a lot of car problems back in the day, like I'm sure some of you can kind of attest to as well. So that was a little sketchy at some points. But when you get to your second job, and even your third job, gets better and better and better. So some other job specifics that I didn't put here on the email or on the PowerPoint. I'm getting into work super early in the morning. I'll do my forecasting. I don't know if anybody's ever watched my forecast or just newscasts in general. We have our long range or our 7-day forecast. We come up with that every single day. We have to do it all from scratch, all 7 days. So that takes about an hour to do. I'll do a couple of other chores and stuff like that, and then I'll get on TV. Some not fun stuff about the job. Obviously, the hours are a little bit tricky, but what can be another problem is the crazy emails that you get from viewers sometimes. People will complain about everything from you didn't get the air temperature right, you didn't get the sky cover right, or it rained at my house, or it didn't rain at my house. So that just comes with any job. You're going to get criticism, and some of those emails can be actually pretty fun. All right, so broadcast meteorology is just a very, very small part of weather. There are plenty of other options if you don't want to do broadcasting, but you just want to get into the weather world. There's the National Weather Service, which is a really, really dependable service. It's nationwide. It's run by the Department of Commerce through the United States government. You can work for the National Weather Service. You can work in the private sector. Any shipping company, UPS, FedEx, anything that sends anything around the world, they need meteorologists to know, hey, where are there big storms over these oceans? Hurricane season is a very difficult time for shipping companies and things like that. So they got to be able to navigate around all these storms, and even over land, they got to know what's going on so they're not driving or flying right into thunderstorms and stuff like that. There's also a lot of research opportunities as well, especially here in the United States with regards to severe weather and tornadoes. That is still a somewhat unknown area of meteorology. We've come a long way in the last 20 years, even the last 50 years. There have been massive improvements on tornado warnings, you know, they're issued for a long enough time, for about 15 to 30 minutes. That'll give people enough time to get in their safe spot and get in the basement. But there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in those areas. So again, and if you wanted to get into the broadcast side, but not necessarily be a meteorologist, you could be a reporter live out in the field, an anchor. If you spend enough time reporting and they kind of promote you up, you could also be a producer, kind of be behind the scenes and write all the stories that go on during the newscast, or you could even be a director and kind of go that route. So there are a lot of different avenues, both broadcasting and with being a meteorologist. And I just wanted to kind of combine the two. So if I could offer any advice to the students that are watching out this afternoon, do your research, learn about the stuff that you want to learn at, what you're passionate about, figure out how it works, how it operates. If you can do that, ask questions, ask your teachers. Again, that's what they're there for. If you want to learn about something, talk to your teachers. Maybe they can incorporate that into their curriculums, or maybe they can contact somebody else like your favorite TV meteorologist, reach out to them and have them answer your questions. Maybe we can come to a school visit if we ever do get back to school in the fall, and if we can even start to kind of go around and visit schools, because we used to do that back when things were back to normal. We had school days where we would go to schools all over Kansas City and talk about our job and how weather works and all that fun stuff. Take classes that interest you. Again, math and science classes. If you're not so good at them, that's okay. I wasn't that good at them either back in the day, but I was able to improve as you went deeper and deeper into your academic career. And then eventually, when you're old enough in college, and you're kind of just looking for stuff to do in between summers, if you have the opportunity, job shadow. You don't even have to be in college to job shadow. You can do that in high school as well. That's a really cool opportunity just to get a small little taste about what the day-to-day life is for a broadcast meteorologist. And then eventually internships, like I said earlier. Columbia in Kansas City for me, those are great opportunities. That's probably where I learned the most, because you can only get so much knowledge in your college courses before you actually have to get out there and see what it's really like in real life. So that is a very, very good learning opportunity. And if you can, I would recommend to do more than one. So you can get a little bit of a taste over here, you can get a little bit of a taste over there as well, and you can kind of get a wide range of ideas. And so you can make a better decision when it's actually time to really figure out what you want to do with your life. So that is about all the slides that I had, all the information. If you have any questions, type them out. They'll be rattling some off to me, and then we'll be kind of doing a back and forth here for the rest of the hour. So if Eric, we can get Eric back up here. I'm going to stop the share really quick.
Yeah, wonderful information, Alex. Thank you so much for sharing that. And just as a reminder for all our attendees, you'll see a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Just click on that, type in any questions, and I'll read them to Alex. And don't be shy. Ask any question. I know you've got some out there, although we covered a lot of information. I'm sure there are still plenty of questions out there. One thing to start with, you said you went to Mizzou, and
I did.
One of the
Go Tigers.
M-I-Z.
Z-O-U, there we go.
You know, and one of the deciding factors, you said, you know, was the in-state tuition, but
yeah.
How are college programs different? You know, is Oklahoma's program different than Mizzou? Or, you know, how does someone go about selecting a program if everything else was equal?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, it just honestly just kind of boils down to where you're most comfortable. I did visit a ton of colleges, obviously, in my last few years of high school. I went to SLU, St. Louis University, went to Creighton, went to Oklahoma, and got accepted at all those places. But, you know, it just honestly felt like Oklahoma was too big, Creighton and SLU were too small. Mizzou, as far as the class sizes go, felt just right. You know, like I was saying a little earlier, I had opportunities to be one-on-one with my professors in a very casual way. And any questions that I had, any help that I needed, they were very available whenever I needed it. So I didn't have to fight for some time with professors, which I would have felt like could have been a problem, especially at Oklahoma. And, you know, I didn't really like the 5.5 hour drive all the way down to Norman. So that was that didn't exactly bode too well. But yeah, so Mizzou was definitely the right choice for me. And, you know, from broadcasting point of view, it is a fantastic journalism school. So just and I have no significant journalism experience. My degree is strictly in atmospheric science. So luckily through the internship at KOMU, at Channel 8, I was able to get the perfect amount of exposure into that journalism world that I needed to kind of get me started. And I was able to roll with it from there.
How did you go about getting the internship? Were you on your own for that, or did you get help from professors, other people at school?
Yeah, one of the classes that I forgot to put on that slide was broadcast meteorology. Luckily, myself and a few other classmates were really interested in just figuring out, you know, what all that is like. So luckily, one of our professors on staff at Mizzou was a former morning meteorologist at KOMU. He was there for many, many years, and he actually did both jobs for a little while there. So he taught a broadcast meteorology class, and so we went through that entire class. It was really, really interesting. We got to do some really cool things there. And finally, towards the end of the semester, I just kind of approached him finally and was just like, hey, if I wanted to do broadcast meteorology, where do I get started? And he said, let me talk to some people and I'll send you an email. And it was easy as that.
All right, we have a question from Allison, who is age 9, and she's in Victoria, Australia.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So a young person, much like yourself, she writes that she's very keen to be a meteorologist, and she loved your talk. And well, first of all, thank you, Allison, for tuning in today. I think she already has one requirement. She probably up in the very early morning hours.
I know. I don't know the time there. It's like 17 hours ahead. That's I appreciate that. Thank you.
And she wants to know, do you have a favorite weather phenomenon?
That's a good question. And that's a tough one. Honestly, that's hard. I don't like cold. So blizzards aren't exactly fun. That would probably be my least favorite. My most favorite would probably be just thunderstorms in general. I think it's just really, really cool how powerful, first of all, they can be. Just that clap of thunder that you can get when lightning strikes really close, it just shakes everything. And it doesn't even seem like the storm tries half the time when that actually does happen. So it's just the power that weather can create as it's moving through an area is mind-boggling to me. Like, if there are storms rolling in tonight, like, honestly, I wouldn't be too surprised depending on when exactly these storms roll in. My building faces north, so I could easily just, sit out there for a little while, watch the lightning in the distance against the skyline, and just watch storms roll in before I have to head inside. That sounds like a nice evening.
I'm looking out my window north too, and it is cloudy a bit. Yeah.
It's getting cloudier.
Yeah. Well, that's a nice segue into the next question from Emily. She wants to know, have you ever had interest in being a storm chaser?
That's a good question. Back in college, like I said, I definitely had opportunities to storm chase. The one deterrent, or the one thing that always kind of made me say no, is the fact that we could leave class, we could be excused for storm chasing, but we had to write a 10-page paper about our experience every single time. So it depended on how good or like how severe these storms supposed to be. So it was always kind of an evaluation every time. But yeah, I definitely had the opportunities to be a storm chaser. Even here at FOX4, I've had some opportunities to storm chase, but this severe weather season has been incredibly boring. with last year with the mile-wide tornado in Douglas County and Leavenworth County, Kansas, That is with nobody getting killed, no fatalities, no injuries or anything like that. That was as good as you can get from a severe weather season. This year, we haven't had anything like that. We had a couple of quick little spin-up tornado warnings about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and that was really about it. But if given the opportunity, yes, I would definitely like to get out there and chase some storms, possibly get some tornadoes as well.
All right, Kelly has a question, and you've touched on this. She asked about the approximate class sizes.
Yeah.
And do you think they would be the same at any other college for meteorology? And I think you talked about how it does vary quite a bit from college to college.
That's right. And when I was doing my research, just trying to figure out, what schools had a meteorology program and how good were those programs at each of these schools, I found very quickly that any Division I college, any big college like a state college, like a Mizzou, like a KU or a K-State, or Iowa State up in Ames is a very big meteorology school. I mentioned Oklahoma as well. Those are going to be the schools that typically have at least an earth science program, but a lot of them do have an atmospheric science or a meteorology program. And once you get to those specific meteorology classes, your class size is probably going to be 20, 30 kids, what you would typically see in most high schools and even most grade schools, especially here in Kansas City. But for those core classes, those entry-level classes when you're a freshman and a sophomore, you're going to have some big class sizes. And I think that's pretty standard across any big university that you go to. Like, I don't know, I think my biggest class ever when I was a freshman, my meteorology 101 class was probably 150 kids or something like that in an auditorium. So that's pretty standard.
An anonymous attendee asked a question that actually Alex and I were talking about before the broadcast. What sort of training did you get in school to be ready for the public speaking and on-camera work you have to do? And let me add on to that question. You talked about collaborations too with colleagues there at FOX4. Did you have training in that, or how did you acquire those skills?
Yes. So starting back in college, I had the opportunity to minor in communications, but I never really wanted to go that deep into communications and kind of stray away from my main path. So as far as the college level preparation, I took public speaking, and that was it. That was really the only big experience I had there. My internships were probably the most important for developing those good communication skills, talking to a camera, knowing that somebody else was on the other side watching. So it was really the internships in Columbia and even here at Channel 9 that got me going. I was able to take those experiences and what I've learned and kind of pick up on those little tidbits that the common viewer probably wouldn't notice, but they're actually pretty important. Those little things can make a very, very big difference, especially during severe weather coverage. So I was able to take that knowledge back to Columbia for the last few months of my time with KOMU, and then on to South Bend. I learned a little bit more and a little bit more. And also for my first job, as far as camera work goes, when I was always weather reporting during the weekdays in the early morning, it was just me out there operating the camera. So I was the behind the scenes guy and I was the on camera guy. I was both. So that was very, very difficult. As you might imagine, at 5 o'clock in the morning in the middle of northern Indiana, it's wintertime, it's snowing, it's 19, 17 degrees, and you're setting up your gear in the dark. That's a humbling moment where you kind of realize that, okay.
And I'm sure you never had any technical difficulties at all.
Oh, it went flawlessly all the time. Like, never had a problem. The camera always turned on. So as you might imagine, there's you just kind of, it's a trial by fire kind of a situation, like any other entry level job. You kind of get in there with the knowledge that you have, and you figure it out, and you learn a lot that way. I honestly believe that is one of the better ways to learn. Obviously, if you have questions, people were very happy to answer those for me. But, when you're out there by yourself and you got to be able to put a product on live TV, you find a way.
All right, the next question is from Cameron. What specific classes would you recommend taking in high school to pursue meteorology? And I guess if I could say that another way too, what do college programs look for in prospective students?
Okay. So when you're in high school, obviously focus a lot on your focus a lot on your math and science courses. If you have the ability to take any science elective you want to. If your school offers a meteorology class, obviously take that. If your school even offers another earth science-based subject, be it geology, even astronomy, anything that is earth science-based is really, really helpful because I didn't have that opportunity in high school. Being at O'Hara, it was a relatively small school, so it only had like the core subjects. I had to wait until college to kind of take that extra stuff. But what people don't realize when you're a TV meteorologist is that you are the scientist at the station, period. Like if there's any science related question, biology, astronomy, botany, geology, anything with an ology in it, you're going to be the person they ask. So it's helpful. It's not necessary, but it's very helpful to kind of have your hand in a bunch of different science subjects. So I would honestly recommend take as many science electives as you can, whatever interests you, do it. Even if you just think, oh, that might be kind of cool to take. You don't really think a lot about it. You're just like, oh yeah, sure, take it. It can be beneficial for you down the road.
Well, and that's it leads to the next question from Allison again from Australia. And I did Google the time. It's 5:30 a.m. or
5:30 a.m. Woo!
So an early riser.
Thank you.
It's just what you mentioned. She asked about earthquakes. Do you predict earthquakes and the geosciences?
Yeah, and that is obviously a lot more prevalent and a lot more necessary on the West Coast, California, Oregon, Washington. But even here in Missouri, there's a fault line on the southeast side of the state. It's very powerful. They've had a lot of earthquakes from that fault system, the New Madrid Fault. So as a meteorologist, we talk about them on air quite a bit because people hear them from all over. As far as predicting them go, that is still a developing part of that field. So it's still incredibly difficult. We don't focus so much on predicting. We're kind of more just like, hey, an earthquake happened in California and people felt it here in Kansas City and parts of Kansas. So that's pretty cool to do sometimes.
Right, next question. Did your coursework at Mizzou cover global weather conditions? And are there international opportunities for research or broadcasting?
Those are good questions. The first one, yes. I was able to take a climates of the worlds class that kind of not only just defined the different climates all across the globe from, humid subtropical to humid continental to, mountainous alpine climates, tundras and that stuff, but just learning how a warming world affects those climates and then affects the weather in other parts of the world as well. So that was very interesting to learn about. And as far as international opportunities, yes, there are companies, especially in Europe, in England, they are very big in the meteorology academic spectrum over there in England. There are actually opportunities to study abroad. I had the opportunity to do that in the University of Reading, I believe. And also a couple of Scandinavian countries too, like Norway and Sweden. Norway, believe it or not, is actually like where meteorology started. I don't want to go too big into the history of that science field of meteorology, but it actually started after World War II when they developed radar for detecting enemy planes, German planes, Japanese planes. That's where radar got its start. And then the Norwegians kind of took it over and it's like, hey, we can kind of see what's out there weather-wise, snow, rain, thunderstorms, whatever. So they incorporated that technology. There's a lot of different places, and not just Europe. You can go to Asia, you can go to Africa, Australia as well. Everybody kind of has their own weather network and how they do things. And I actually know people who are from the United States, and they do TV meteorology in Australia. They do TV meteorology in London or in England and other, predominantly English-speaking European countries. So, yeah, you can do whatever you want to, really. Even in Canada, up in Canada, they have a lot of U.S. Mets up there as well.
Especially if you like cold weather.
Especially if you like cold weather, yeah. That's the place for you.
Alex, you mentioned every day you do the daily forecast, the long-range forecast. How much is that a collaboration, and how much do you do on your own?
That's a great question. On a regular day, it's all me. It's all on the meteorologist. And obviously I had, a few years of doing it. I have the websites that I use. They're all saved. They're all bookmarked, so I can easily get to them and everything like that. But on a regular day, it's just me. When there is a big snowstorm coming during winter weather events, that's typically where we'll do our own forecasts. But we might shoot a quick message to the meteorologist over at Channel 9, or we might talk with what KCTV5 thinks and that kind of thing. So we'll collaborate on those snow forecasts, because snow forecasts are probably one of the hardest things to do because, again, weather is ever changing, especially here in the Midwest.
Are there ever disagreements among your colleagues on the forecast? Maybe this is a little too much inside baseball.
No, that's a good question.
How do you deal with those?
Yeah, sometimes those are tough because you kind of get out of the scientist mind and you kind of get into a regular person mind, because you get stubborn. You get stubborn, and I've fallen into this trap plenty of times before, and I'm relatively new to this. You can be like, no, I think it's going to, like just this morning, perfect example. The meteorologist before me, my colleague Gary Frank, he went 91 for today's high temperature, and I'm like, I think it's going to be 93. So there's, and that happens with every single day 1 through 7. You're always like, well, this person went this, but based on what I'm looking at and based on what I know about the atmosphere, it could be this. So yeah, it's a give and take. We always try to keep things consistent. So especially on TV, when you see our long ranger, when you see our 7-day forecast, the goal is to have that stay relatively the same day in and day out, with only very little changes between shifts. So this morning, my forecast looked a certain way. Carly did her forecast a couple hours later, and it looked just a little bit different. In the evening, when Gary comes in and when he starts doing the news starting at 5 o'clock, if you tune in, you might notice that his forecast, his 7-day, looks just a little bit different. But they all pretty much say the same thing. There's going to be a little bit of some tweaks. So that's kind of like what we try to focus on, just tweaking it instead of these big changes from day to day.
All right, Tasha has a question about the Sahara dust storm.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The question is, what do you know about the dust storm? I believe it started to impact the U.S. and
it did.
I guess that's the question. Has it started?
Yeah. Just yesterday, I've kind of been talking about this intermittently throughout the entire week. That dust storm moved into the Gulf Coast into the southern United States yesterday. There were some really cool pictures of just the morning sky in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. There was no blue sky at all. Everything was gray. It kind of looked like it was actually a different planet, like it was a sunrise on a different planet. It was a very weird scene, very hazy sky, the sun barely coming through. And what was very interesting about this dust storm was the fact that it was just so dense. There was just so much dust that was picked up. All of it kind of moved, 5,000 plus miles across the Atlantic Ocean. And, these dust storms happen every single year right around this time. Like dust storms are not anything new. You know, they happen every year. But it's just the fact that there was so much dust picked up at the same time. All of it pretty much stayed together because sometimes some dust can go north, some dust can go south, and it can kind of break up. But this main dust layer stuck together all the way across the ocean. And that's kind of why it's been a big deal over the last couple of weeks.
All right. What advice do you have now that would make it easier for others just getting started? And I guess another way to say that is, you know, what's the one thing or one or two things that you know now that you wish you knew back middle school or high school?
Yeah, that's $1 million question. What can I possibly do differently next time? Oh, well, unfortunately, I don't have enough time to fully answer that question, but I will give you the big points. What I would first of all say, if you are in high school or if you're just about to go into college, I know it's a very weird scene, it's a very weird time now, but stick to your studies. If you are passionate about weather, if you're trying to figure out if you like weather or not, do your research. Learn as much as you possibly can. Retain as much information as possible, because now that everything is starting to go virtual and we may stay that way for some time, it's very easy to kind of lose things and fall behind now that we're kind of in this new age of remote education. So what I would say is learn as much as you can early on, and that will help you better on down the road or farther down the road. Also, you know, have those good study habits. Study as much as you possibly can before the test. Do not start studying the night before. There have been some nightmares in college that are, I don't want to ever do that again. So
Been there.
yeah. Study. Learn. And, you know, just realize that you're going to make mistakes. You know, I'm sure your parents and some of your teachers tell you that sometimes. You know, you're going to mess up. You're going to take a wrong turn. Gosh, I know I did more than once. Even starting out in the real world, you're going to make those mistakes. But what you got to do is you got to learn from them, because that's what life is. And once you learn from them, you grow. And then when that situation comes back up again, you remember, oh yeah, don't do that. Do this instead. So yeah.
Wait, and you talked about you know, talking to teachers. You know, if you have problems and you know, with coursework or whatever, you know, don't be afraid to go to teachers and
right
and mentors. Did you have to develop those study habits? Did that come natural to you, or were there any techniques that you had to learn to buckle down, as you say?
You know, I've kind of always been blessed to have parents who kind of just instilled those habits in me early on as a very small child, even before school. But yeah, there's definitely some other things I had to pick up on, especially once I got to college, because, you know, there's no parents. It's just you. You are 100% responsible in your education. And oftentimes you have to pay for it yourself. So you realize that you can't screw around. So, you know, I was able to kind of, freshman year was a little bit tricky to kind of get your feet underneath you and just kind of learn how the ebbs and flows go. But eventually, you know, sometimes I had to study 7 to 10 days before a test, just because that's what you got to do. If you don't understand the information that well, you got to give yourself more than enough time to learn it and get ready to go for the exams. So it was just that rhythm of, you know, studying a week out before a test, doing homework as soon as you possibly can, and the second you get stuck, ask for help. You know, that's the easiest thing. That's the easiest thing to do. Luckily in college, I had 2 roommates who are both engineers. So we had a lot of smart brains in that house. So that helped a lot. Again, have friends who are smart. That will help you a lot as well. Smarter than you. You got to have friends that are smarter than you.
And that's a good point. There'll be a positive influence on them as on you, as I'm sure you were the same with them.
Yeah.
Alex, you mentioned that there were several jobs in meteorology
Yeah.
that aren't broadcast meteorology, that aren't in front of the
Mhm.
camera. Enza has a question about those jobs.
Mhm.
And she'd like to know, what would those jobs be? What do those people do?
Yeah, so I know I mentioned working at the National Weather Service. They put out their own forecasts, and they put out their own, they don't really call it a long ranger, but they call it like an extended forecast. Anybody can go to it. It's www.weather.gov. And they have offices all across the United States. They divvy up the country into little sections, and there's an office for each one of those sections for the continental US, in Hawaii, in Alaska, and possibly some other islands as well, like Puerto Rico, I believe. There's a National Weather Service office down there. So you can go pretty much anywhere you want to and have some sort of weather influence to kind of go into for work. So again, that's just one section. You know, if you are a meteorologist in the private sector, odds are you're going to be doing your own forecasts and developing kind of like a long range, like a 7 or 10 day forecast for shipping companies. As you're an air traffic controller, of course, you're landing planes, you're monitoring radar at, you know, airports all across the country, and you're kind of relaying that information to pilots and weather reports that they can get digitally right there in the cockpit, so they can kind of see what's going on, what's out there, and where's it going. Obviously very important, because, you know, the planes, they can't fly into that stuff, so they got to divert and go around it, and then that delays and backs stuff up. So that's very important in the aviation world. If we didn't, I had a professor back in college say to us several times, if we never flew, weather wouldn't be important. We wouldn't have meteorologists around. I would be jobless if we didn't fly planes. So aviation has been a big help. But yeah, I don't really know too much about the private sector, but as far as I know, when I was young and kind of looking around and exploring the private sector world, that's kind of what I found.
All right, Melina, if I'm pronouncing the name correctly, I apologize if not, is in Archie, Missouri. And
okay, yeah.
This is a question you've touched on before, but is, where do you recommend I go to college for meteorology? And did you put a wish list together and, like, you know, to select a college, or what was your approach?
Yeah, so I knew I wanted something that was class size was pretty important to me. I didn't want to just be another person in a crowd of people. You know, I wanted to be able to talk to my professor, if not in class, because I'm a relatively shy person. I know that that's kind of weird for a TV meteorologist to be kind of a shy person, but talking in front of crowds is still very difficult. You know, I'm a regular human being. Getting up in front of a big old crowd of people, you know, freshman year, that communications public speaking class, that was a nightmare. Oh my gosh. Every single speech day was horrible, but, you know, you kind of get used to that stuff. But you kind of learn how you learn the best in certain environments versus others. So, you know, for me, class size was important. Being close to home in case of an emergency, or, you know, bad weather, or if you wanted to stay for a long weekend or anything like that, that was important to me. So Mizzou checked off a lot of boxes, being only 2 hours east. You know, like I said, class size was relatively small. I was able to talk to my teachers and professors, and you know, it's really just personal preference. Like, you just kind of learn what factors will help you learn the best, and what environment you think you'll thrive in the quickest. So using those two things, and just kind of what's around you. Again, you know, you could be anywhere in the world right now watching this. So just kind of depends on what's nearby. Or if you want to go out to the coast, you can go there. If you want to stay close to home, you can do that too.
And do your research.
Yeah, and do your research. Very important.
All right, we've got a couple minutes left, so we'll do a couple more questions. You mentioned job shadowing. Do the local stations, such as FOX4, offer that to high school students?
Yeah. Anybody that is, high school or even a couple of college students have interned here before and just job shadow just in general. Again, with the current situation, we can't really do that right now, but once stuff starts getting a little bit more back to normal, once the social distancing can kind of lax and stuff like that, we could start letting people into the building. But before all of this went down, we had about one or two interns over the summer, FOX4. Even when I was interning, it wasn't just me for the summer. There's two of us during that summer, and it doesn't even have to be in the summer. It can be in the fall, It can be in the wintertime as well. So get out there, ask around, make a phone call, send an email, do whatever you can to just kind of put your foot in the door.
All right, we got 1 minute left. We'll end with this one. What was your biggest challenge from going to college to becoming a professional meteorologist? Besides getting up at 3 a.m. or maybe that was the biggest challenge.
Honestly, that was up there. If I had to make a list, the first 2 weeks on the early morning shift are the toughest 2 weeks in anyone's personal life, at least in mine. So outside of the wacky schedule, that's going to happen no matter what you do or where you go. I would probably say just getting outside of my comfort zone, like I mentioned. I didn't really do a whole lot of public speaking. Wasn't really a big talker when I was in grade school and high school. I did my thing, I got in, I did my thing, and I got out, So it was just really stepping outside that comfort zone, getting comfortable, just having conversations with people. I think that's getting harder and harder now, with cell phones. Everybody's on their cell phones. Everyone's quiet. Everyone's looking down and doing this and scrolling and texting. People aren't talking to each other as much anymore. And it's kind of becoming not necessarily a lost art, but it's becoming something that you see just less of. And that was very difficult to, and I'm still working on that. I'm still improving my communication skills day in and day out. But it was just really being able to look at the camera and think of the person on the other side of that camera watching, and just having a conversation with them about what the weather's going to do today, what the weather's going to do tomorrow, and what the weather's going to do for the next 7 days. So.
It must have been both exciting and nerve-wracking that first day. You're out on the real job, and like it got real. Sudden.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I will say that my first day in front of the camera for my internship, I already know the exact day. It was July 1st, 2015. And that red light on the camera came on, and I don't remember what I said. Your mind goes blank, and you're just like, here's the weather. Like, you just start talking because you got to say something. You can't just be silent for a minute or so, or however long your weather report is. So, it's horrifying, but at the end of the day, you just got to treat it like there's somebody watching, but it makes it a lot easier if you just say to yourself, hey, you're just talking to a thing, and you're talking about the weather with your graphics behind you. That's it. That's as simple as you can make it.
And not to be too dramatic, but reality, sometimes meteorologists save lives, and whether it's severe weather or you mentioned aviation, it's
sometimes it can be very stressful and very difficult, and things happen quick. And gosh, sometimes things go wrong. Sometimes things go really, 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 really wrong. And you gotta, first of all, be calm and composed enough to handle it, to be able to deliver the information in a way that doesn't cause mass hysteria and a citywide panic. But you got to give it to people straight. Like, hey, this is what's happening. And if you're in the path of this, you need to do something about it now, like right now. Like, turn off the TV and go do something about it now. So, yeah.
It's definitely a fascinating field. And thank you, Alex, so much for taking the time to join us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
It's been a great conversation. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in as well. The recording of this program will be on the Linda Hall Library's website at lindahall.org and also on the library's Facebook page. So if you have friends who you think would enjoy watching this, go to those places, lindahall.org and on our Facebook page. So yeah, thank you again, everyone, and especially thank you, Alex.
Yeah.
And
thank you. And thank you, everyone, for watching. I really appreciate it. I'm glad I was able to come on here this Friday afternoon and talk to you guys about the weather.
And now we'll have to check the forecast to see if it was it 91 or 93 degrees?
Yeah, no, I do that every afternoon now. I didn't think I would be that into it, but it kind of turns into a game a little bit. You're playing yourself and you're also playing everybody else, not only your other meteorologists who work with you, but also the other meteorologists in competing stations. So yeah.
That's good stuff. All right, thanks.
I got to get on here.
And have a great rest of the day.
Yeah, you too. Thank you. Thank you very much, Eric.